this is Jarvis Klein. In this video we will be doing session number 2 in our mini project to code a program that would be useful for figuring out parameters for aerial surveying, such as your flying height and the resolution that you're going to get with the various instruments that you have on board your airplane. And just a quick look at what we did last time is we worked on the data format that we'll use so that the user can configure the instruments, define the parameters of the instruments that are going to be used in the aerial survey, and then the idea being the user can save those as a configuration file and use them whenever he opens up the software to do any mission planning. So we were still in the middle of designing or implementing the user interface where the user can define the instruments that are going to be used. So where I was with that is, well, basically, just off the top of my head, the thing that I wanted to address is kind of synchronization between the data values that are populated into the fields on the user interface versus what is logically within the program memory. So for example, if the user clicks here and then clicks maybe another item and clicks back, we would populate it with the information from the objects that we have in memory. But if it's this new item, then one of the things I need to address is the situations where we will allow invalid parameters. And if it's a well-defined instrument, probably we don't allow invalid parameters. But if the user is in the middle of defining a new instrument configuration, then we do probably want to somewhat gracefully handle if a field is just blank or something like that. So it's kind of a quick survey of what I have in mind at the moment. I'll just dive into things. If we look at, this was kind of our schedule for last time, and we didn't get as far as we wanted to, but that's okay. For today's session, I'm planning maybe to do about 4 hours, and all I really want to accomplish is finishing the user interface by which the user can define the instrument configurations, and then if we have time we'll work on the main program as well. But today just finishing user interface and program logic around saving, loading, keeping in memory, synchronized in memory, the instrument configurations. So, right, let me go ahead and get started. Where I was is we have this data type that represents an instrument configuration, and this one is set up so that there are, for example, values that must be valid. So if our instrument type is a laser scanner, then there's no provision for the instrument field of view to be undefined. There's just a member variable here as a value type double. We assume this is a well-defined value, not a blank value, for example. So it's going to be helpful if I make kind of an analog that gracefully allows empty values, and I'm just going to call this user edit like storage, or what is this? Don't really have a good descriptive name. It's user editable, gracefully handles nulls values, maybe invalid or not fully defined, I don't know. And this is basically just going to mirror the regular object, but is going to allow every field to be blank or null. So I guess that is even going to include the instrument type enumeration. So instead of an enum, it's now a ref enum, which just wraps a regular value type enum to be nullable. So instead of a heads up saying that it's always valid, now we say it can be null. Instrument name could already be null, but or blank or null, or blank or null, I guess. This one, or null, or null. This one's already set. This one, I'm going to get rid of these comments because they applied to the main. You know, what I can say is just this class is an analog to the main class for defining instrument configurations. This class represents a working object which may not be validly defined, perhaps because the user is in the middle of editing it. Let's see. And just continuing on. Or null. Or null. And looks like that fleshes it out. Well, the way I was going to use this is coming back to our user interface. We had here a kind of special dummy object or placeholder object to represent the values that the user is populating into the new field here. And now I'm just going to update that. So with the new data type we just made. And so now what will happen when, for example, we do a refresh, yeah, we'll just come along, and now when we, I should probably figure out a better name for this. We have an option that says populate the form fields with the information of the currently selected instrument configuration, if that needs to be done, and justify user interface fields with, I mean, this makes sense to me, but maybe it's not the best way to phrase it. So justify user interface fields to selected instrument configuration, i.e. populate fields from memory, something like that. Very long enumeration name. Maybe I should take advantage of the option to rename that so that I don't have to go in and do it manually. And anyway, kind of ridiculous, huh? But that's what I do. I come up with these really long names. And we were just in the middle of saying here that if we are going to populate, so now this was a placeholder object to represent the source from memory that we are drawing from to populate the fields on the form, and now it has a new data type, which is the one that could be not fully well defined. So we'll use that. And now I need to handle the case of converting from a well-defined object to one to this other class type that might be not as well, fully defined. So I need just to be able to convert one of these to one of these, and maybe I'll write that function within this one, within this class. New from valid instrument configuration. So probably could say copy config. What I'm writing here is basically a constructor for this class, but I'm just writing a static function that returns an object of the class instead, because that allows me to give basically a well thought out name for the function, as opposed to just a constructor that really has no function name. And I do that just because I like to give explicit function names that describe what the function is doing, and yeah, I just think it's worthwhile. So I'm working a little bit at odds to how the language itself is set up or kind of structured, but that's okay. And moving along, what I'll do is just make a new object of my return type, and populate it up so the instrument type is new from. Another thing I'll just point out is my naming on the argument here. So I prefixed it with arg to say it's an argument, so within the scope of this function, I know when I look at that variable it's an argument to the function, which I often but not always do. And then I prefix it again with copy init to say I'm doing a copy initialization. So it's sort of as opposed to an assignment initialization, which would imply I were retaining this object reference. Instead, this is a copy initialization, which is just saying I'm going to copy some stuff out of this, for example. So just a kind of idiomatic style of naming things in a way that is a heads up for how they're being used. Why did this not like that? Surely it takes an argument of the type instrument type enum. Oh, because I shouldn't have defined this a second time. I should refer to this one. So let's do that. And try this again. Woohoo! Arg. Yeah. And the other ones, so if laser scanner, instrument field of view, if laser scanner effective points per second, if laser scanner beam divergence, in this case, it was already a nullable type in the object that I'm copying, but I don't want to take the same object because I claimed that I'm copying everything out of it, not taking references to the same thing. So I'm going to use a function. This is another thing that is kind of another useful idiom, I suppose, is sometimes you're writing a function which is logically a member function to an object, but you may want it to work or to have a special behavior in the case that you, so to speak, call it on a null object. What you end up having to do if you want to do something like that is just make a static function within that class. So this is no longer a member function of this class, but a static function so that it can accept a null argument. And if laser scanner beam divergence So what's happening here is it's similar. If I had written a simple copy function that were an object of the class, I could say if this is not null, then go ahead and whatever equals. So this is how it would look if I had written the copy function as a member of the class, a member function. But then I would have to have separate null handling if I wanted special behavior for when this object that I wanted to call copy on were null. So instead I use a static function, and it's the logic behind this function here is basically what you see here. Is just otherwise return null. So anyway, moving along. If camera now, if camera total equals, and this is, let's see, if camera total field of view, if camera num pixels, if camera num pixels, if frame camera total field of view, but this is optional in the underlying object, so I'm again going to do a copy, or copy or null from the arg if frame camera total field of view. The next one is if frame camera num pixels. This is again a case of using this. If frame camera num pixels, and if push broom camera. So we're getting there, just about finished with this kind of copy constructor. If push broom, then just return the object we have just constructed. Now I'll take this and go use it back where we were. My names are too long, I know. So that works, and that works. This is the case that the user is editing the item in the user interface that is the new one. So if he's clicking here, then the working instrument configuration will be this one. If we had another item that were a validly defined instrument, then we would be falling into this path. So now, if our refresh option is that we should populate the fields with whatever is our working object in memory, then we'll go ahead and do it. And now this should really not exist, right? I don't know why it's not giving me an error there, but it's certainly an error, right? Where is this defined? Anyway, that doesn't exist. So if it's let's first of all test for the null case. Then everything gets set to false. So this is saying if the user has not clicked a instrument type, then the radio buttons that allow him to specify the instrument type shall be unchecked. Otherwise we know it's not null, so if the value is a laser scanner, check the box to say it's a laser scanner. If it's, and these are radio buttons, so if you check one, all the others uncheck. Otherwise, if it's a frame camera, specify it's a frame camera. Otherwise, if it's the push broom camera, it's the push broom camera, and it's still an assertion failure if none of those enums catch it. So now this can go ahead and this works fine because sorry, instrument name. If you assign a null to this text field, it's just a blank. The other parameters, so should I populate these if, and I guess I can. I don't need to populate these if it's not a laser scanner type, instrument type, but it wouldn't hurt to populate them. They would just be hidden if it's not an instrument laser scanner type. And anyway, if laser scanner, this is the instrument field of view. What I want to do is get a string that's going to be blank if the value is null or undefined, and otherwise just call toString on the double value that is in there. So toString or blank. So this is a static function that says I might be giving a null argument, but I'm gonna call toString on the argument I give if it isn't null. Otherwise, just return blank. So instrument total field of view, pulse repetition rate in kilohertz. So this is something I had gone and done. I may need to handle this one a little more manually because where's my kilohertz or points? So if it's null, this is just blank. Otherwise, pulse repetition rate in kilohertz is equal to the value in hertz divided by 1,000 converted to a toString. That's how that would work. And then beam divergence. Again, yes. So that was correct. Oh. Because it was optional, it had already been structured to use the toString or blank function here. So let's continue populating the fields on our user interface. So we've got these 3, then we've got 4 more for if it's a frame camera. So these are just called edit frame camera, etc. So edit frame camera, the across track field of view, and we'll set that. Let's see. If frame camera or if camera. Right. And the next one is number of pixels across track, which is number of pixels across track. Then we have some optional parameters, which is the along track field of view would be next. The text of that. Whatever it is, along track field of view. Along track, and finally a long track num pixels. Long track num pixels. Then we come to our push broom camera. Bop, bop, bop. And we say we say what? The first one is the across track field of view. I mean, you'll notice this is the same as up here, That's okay. It's just, will be either in this case or the other. We could put these in an if statement, but oh well. A long track field of view. Numpixels across track, rather, is the next one. If push broom cam, or yeah, frame camera, numpixels across track. And the push broom camera, a long track field of view, which is optional. If push broom camera, a long track field of view. Alright, so that should populate our text boxes. So when we refresh this form, if we are populating the fields with the object in memory, then that'll all happen. We're finished with that for now. So the next step is probably, I suppose, figuring out how the user is going to apply the values after he enters them to make a new configuration, or so forth. I'm a bit dissatisfied because I want to rearrange the user interface here a bit, and these are kind of laid out here for convenience of designing them in the user interface, but when you run the program, they just get superimposed on each other. Maybe I should compile it. What is this button? Oh, where are we? So it compiles successfully, and yet, does the designer work? Oh, that's not great, but just reopening the program can sometimes solve that. So where were we? And we're back. Hello, Mr. Designer. Well, anyway, we were about to run our program. So, anyway, you can see our program here. If I populate something and switch back, it's still there. What I would like to do is add some buttons maybe here or down here. Speaking about applying, yeah, just guess this could be trimmed a little bit so that they're all of a similar height, which should be convenient. I need to apply, if it's a new instrument type, apply it, and I suppose we could go from there with it. So yeah, I'll probably also add some status indication that indicates whether the current object has been modified and whether you want to apply it or revert it. So why don't I work on that? I'll just need to add a couple more buttons and a label for the status readout. But these things are kind of in my way. I wonder if what I could do, I'm gonna quickly make a backup of my source code before I mess with the user interface, because sometimes Windows Forms get corrupted. Isn't that wonderful? These are in my way, and it's just annoying, so I'm gonna see if I can do kind of a trick here. I mean, I still want them to be laid out on the designer here, but let me think of a trick that I may do here. I'll use the tab panel. This tab panel is not going to be visible to the user, but it's just going to be for my convenience. And I've never actually tried this exact thing that I have in mind, so we'll see how it turns out. You can come into there, and you can come into there. one more tab. And you can come into here. So now with this kind of massive little tab page, so this is gonna be kind of funny. Let's see. Actually, I want to position this exactly where I want this to come to once I do some stuff in the initialization of the form. Probably gonna be helpful if I make this big enough. I guess the location within this, I don't know, could be 1, 1 for all of them. And I can trim this up. This is the largest one. That gets trimmed up. Oh, I thought I had more space available for this one than I do. That's okay. Trim it up a bit. So the height of this laser scanner group box is 159, 140 something. Anyway, that's okay. So what I'm planning to do now is when the program is initialized, or the form anyway, I suppose I should name this. It's really a dummy for designer convenience, and the tab pages within it are doesn't matter too much, but tab panel, you know, dummy page 1, dummy page 1, dummy page 2. Oh, that's not what I wanted to be editing. The text can stay the same, just default. Because this is not going to be visible. But up here, alright, so now in my initialization of the program, initialize controls. Probably don't need this anymore, really. But what I'm going to do is I want to remove this control from its tab. So if I look at the designer, this is probably getting added as a child of the tab. Just skip down here. So yeah, this tab page is, you know, owning this laser scanner. Otherwise it would have been a control group box. Otherwise it would have been a control right off the main form, and that's what I'm gonna put it back as, assuming this works. So this, the tab page, yeah, I don't know. Controls, remove this guy. Does that return anything? No. And this controls add this guy. How's that? And this controls Rather, let's just set the position, this group box laser scanner position, location is, well, really just the main tab panel. Location is where I'm going to try putting it. It's a property. So, see, this is an example of what I find kind of annoying. This is a property, and presumably it's returning a new object, and then I'm assigning it to a property, and maybe I copy it at that point. But to me it's not entirely clear what the object lifecycle is across this assignment, and so, you know, am I keeping a reference to this location? Yeah, well, it may even be a value type. Let's just see what the system drawing point is. Oh, it's a struct anyway. But if it weren't a struct, I would be griping a little bit about it not being totally clear object reference flow there. Anyway, moving on. The same thing's going to happen for all the other group boxes. So let's try it. Page 2. Controls. Frame camera. And, you know, maybe what I should do is just say, so if we figure out later that this is not really the best place, then we'll change it from here, maybe to offset it or something. And the last one. So, we no longer need this. I'll just compile the errors away. We don't need to set that anymore because I'm doing it when the program starts. Well, let's see what we get. Oh, well, the other thing I want to do, is just say goodbye tab panel. Let's see what this works out to be. So that appears to have worked, which is cool because that's the first time I have done that particular trick. But it looks okay, so now it'll be a little nicer when I look at the designer to see that I'm going to put some buttons here. I mean, this is still a little annoying. Let me move this up, and then we'll just add an offset. You know, whatever margin we want, I'll just add it in here. Move it down a little, I don't know, 10 pixels. So we'll see how that looks, but let me go ahead and put on the buttons that I want, which is gonna be probably an apply button and a revert button. I guess revert will be on the left. Let's see. Revert edits. Otherwise, the user can apply the edits. We may make these enabled or not enabled depending on whether the user has made any edits. Oops. That's funny. And I want a, well, if we do that, we don't really need the little label prompt, as we can see by whether these are enabled or not. The user can see whether he has made edits, I suppose. So we'll just go with that for the moment, and let's go ahead and see what happens when the user clicks these. Let me have a look at my refresh form function, because I may pull out some of what we did within it. The refresh form is refreshing the instrument list, and then it goes on and it does some other stuff. I think what I'll do though is pull this out, the part where we populate. Yeah, from here on down is really just about setting the values of the user interface controls, and I'm just going to pull it out because we're going to have kind of an analogous thing that's going to go the other way and write whatever is in these controls to the object in memory. So I'll just call the function there that I'm going to go write now, which is going to be, I don't know what it's called yet. Let me get my paste buffer out. So the working instrument configuration, that as well. I can pull this out, it's okay. Then I'm also going to need to copy this, because it was being referenced. And what this is something like this. Well, populate. Populate. Something like that, I guess. Flush. You know, maybe I should say flush. Flush memory object values to user interface fields. From memory. I don't know. These are not good names. I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna call this back up here in the refresh form, which is if yes, then call that function. And I gave it a prefix to say this is like a private utility function, just to say that it's like a sub function, I guess. Just make a little hierarchy of functions, and this is just kind of a queue. This is like a utility, it's called by other functions. Roughly is how that works out in my mind. And now I actually want to write the reverse of this, which is just produce one of these guys, really. Memory object from current user interface fields. I guess that's descriptive enough. I guess this is also a private utility function. And we're just gonna load this object up with what is on the user interface. So instrument type is the first thing, and let's just test each radio button. If it's a laser scanner, come on. Laser scanner. Too long, I know it's too long. Otherwise, if we're a frame camera, it's just the same, but it's a frame camera. Otherwise, if we're a push broom camera, it's just the same, but we're a push broom camera. Otherwise, it's already null, but I'll just assign it to null anyway, just as clarity, I guess. We can go ahead and, since we've already tested for this case, we can say that if it is a laser scanner, then we need to populate the laser scanner fields. And we say that if field of view across track is first, so actually I just can directly say laser scanner across track total field of view. What I'm doing here, because I've subclassed my edit box, I have a function that directly returns, tries to parse the text in the edit box as a double value and returns it as this ref double class type, so that it could be null if it doesn't parse successfully. So what'll happen is if it's blank text in the edit box, or if it just doesn't parse validly as a real value, double value, then this is going to be null, which is what I want to happen in that case anyway. Otherwise it'll be valid, and that is also great. So points per second, again, is just this edit laser scanner. Pulse repetition rate. Here I have a little mismatch, which is maybe not the best way to do things, but it's how I did it. Where in the underlying type, I'm saving the value down to the total number of points, but in the user interface, the user is defining it in terms of multiples of 1,000. So just handle this one manually. I mean, I could take the chance also to see if these are valid values, such as that they shouldn't be negative. But I'll deal with error handling like that later, I guess. If we do it at all, because I might not, but... Let's see... if it's null, then just for clarity, this is null. Otherwise... basically, that's what we're doing. Would work. It's not the most beautiful thing, but it will work. And then the other laser scanner parameter is the beam divergence. So that should finish with that case. Here's our next case. If it's a camera of any type, then we have the total field of view. We'll take it though from the list box, from the group box that is for the frame camera. So this is something to just keep track, keep straight. because this same variable is going to be assigned in this case as well, but from a different source. If camera numpixels, frame camera numpixels, if frame camera, then in the along track direction, the field of view, and then if frame camera numpixels in the along track direction, so that should handle that case for values, which is correct. Some of these are going to be the same here, roughly. This is the push broom camera. This is the same, but from a different source. Edit push broom camera. This is the cross track field of view. Frame push broom camera. This is the cross track, meaning the direction perpendicular to the direction the airplane is flying. Cross track numpixels. And finally, if push broom camera, field of view along track in the direction the airplane is flying. Sometimes after doing something like this, I just do kind of a sanity check of using the behavior of the user interface here to highlight all the locations that something has been referenced. And it would look odd if something has been referenced twice when it shouldn't be. But you can see this, it really is the same reference here, but not here. And that's the same, and that is unique, that's unique, that's unique. I mean, it's just, rather than squinting your eyes too hard, it just helps you make sure everything was assigned correctly, or at least give you a warning that maybe something wasn't assigned correctly. Just a little check, and looked like that all worked out. So now we have this function that we can use, and we're probably going to use it in our apply button. So if the user clicks revert, then we are going to, I should really just sit down and figure out a better name for this, but I mean, what was it called back in MFC, Microsoft Foundation classes, in the old style of doing it? It's just called update data. I mean, really what we're doing here is an update data 1 or 0, I forget which way it goes. But, oh well. Otherwise, the user's applying the edits. We should call a refresh form as well, because there's something else now that needs to happen in the refresh form button, and let me go do it while I'm thinking of it. And that is to say whether the user has modified. I guess I can put this with my utility functions here. I'll also have a Boolean property. User has edited instrument configuration. And this is just going to figure out whether if we go this way, from user interface, or if we go the other way. So I've used this a couple times here. Maybe I should make this, well, probably only I used it once, but I still will make this a property now. So let me just make this in memory memory current instrument configuration, maybe. And this is gonna be basically this. Now, because it's a property that does some work, whenever I use it, I'm gonna make a local copy. Is that clear? Clear enough, I guess. And could certainly be null. Or could it? No. Let's see here. Well, let me just flow through it. We'll have a special case if the user's on the new one, editing the new instrument. So let's see here. I'll just go ahead and okay, enough. Replace all within my selection. And so, has the user edited the user interface? The other one. Now, this could be populated from this if the user is editing a new object on the user interface. But anyway, that's just to say that we have a special case if one more maybe property bool selected instrument configuration is new, and do that. This one. So I just want to say, has he selected the new one? And we have a test for that. If he has nothing selected, then I guess it's not the new one. Otherwise, we just return the test of whether if it's null, then the user is editing the new instrument configuration. It should also be the last item in the list view. So we could also test for it that way, but I'll do the test this way and say if the user's editing the new one, then we want to figure out, has he done anything to it? Is everything null, or there something that isn't null? Oh gosh. I guess the test I really want to do is just look at the fields themselves and see if the user has edited anything on them. This is not as elegant as I would like. What I would like is to test on this object whether there's anything undefined. However, that won't perfectly work for me, because if the user has entered in garbage, here, I want to actually enable the apply button, so that when the user clicks apply, we can tell him that he entered garbage here. but what I'm doing right now when I create this object is I parse all this stuff. This would parse as a null because it's expecting a double. So if I just look at this object, it's going to appear as if the user hasn't entered anything, when I actually do want to test if the user has entered anything, even if it wasn't valid. So that's where we are, and just kind of piddling forward here. So if the user's editing the new one, then we have a special test. Really, we don't even need either of this. That's in the else case. So what we want here is just if we'll just test for each type of instrument and then look if he's added anything in those fields. If it's enough if he gives it an instrument name. Then the user has edited something. Otherwise, if he's got the laser scanner checked, then he needs... should I make a new function? I don't think I have a utility for this, but it might be a useful utility to have. So let's go to my string util kind of collection of static functions in my library project, and we're going to make a new string utility, which is just going to say any string not blank, or basically I want to write a function that says is any string not blank. Let me just be clear. Any string not blank, nulls ignored. Any string not blank, ignore nulls. I guess I can phrase it this way. And this is going to be a function that accepts, for convenience, the user can call this function. Let's see, what's the syntax here? The user can call the function like this: string 1, string 2, string 3. So it has a variable argument list, and we'll just get them in as if it were an array. So I think the array can never be null, but if it were, it would be false. And then for each item, if the string I equals arg string set I, if string I is not null and string I length greater than 0, then it's true. Otherwise, if we get through all that, then it's false. Let's go use our function back in our programs project. Basically, we can return that directly. Any string not blank. And we're going to have a laser scanner text boxes. So we've got this string, and we've got this string, and we've got this string. And otherwise, if the instrument type is the frame camera, Then we'll test some different fields. Then we're going to test the frame camera fields, a cross-track field of view, a cross-track num pixels, then a long track. Let's see if this works. Well, not exactly, but close enough. Then the other case, if he has the push broom camera instrument type selected, then we test the push broom camera ones. Field of view, num pixels, the long track total field of view. Otherwise, the user doesn't have any group box selected to specify an instrument type, and he hasn't given an instrument name, so he has not done anything. He has made no edits. Otherwise, if the user is editing a configuration that has been saved, so it has been previously saved as a valid configuration, then we get the value of that here. Otherwise, the user's going to have this one here. And I just want to check, basically, a comparison between these two to see. Anyway, this is the object we get if we make a new object from what the user has entered in the user interface. This is what we would have if, if we reverted the changes and took the information from our objects in memory, and we want to check if they are equal or equivalent, and that will tell us whether the user has made any edits. So we have a new function here. We're really doing a by value comparison. So we'll compare each individual member by value. And let's see. Starting with instrument type. Does the enum have a comparison? No, I never did implement that, but it might be worth implementing. Let's go see comparison for ref enum types. And I'm going to specify what it does. If either one is null, I'll say nulls come after everything else, and they are equal to each other. So, whenever you're comparing objects that could be null, I like to specify within the name of the comparison function how nulls are going to be handled. And one item is if you're comparing a non-null item with a null item, how do they compare? So this is just saying that the nulls would be the furthest up in the list, or furthest in the list. So if the left-hand side were null and the right-hand side weren't, I would return a 1. I mean, that's arbitrary, but I just wanted to be specific. I mean, I can write the other version of the function that says nulls least if I wanted to. But just either way, I like to be explicit about how I'm going to write the function. And then if they're both null, you might want a situation similar to the way that nans compare if it's a double type. You might want a situation that if they're undefined, they're null, they do not compare equal. Or you might want a situation where if they're undefined, they are null, they do compare equal. So you just specify that in the name of your comparison function. So I just write this one, which is okay for the use case I want right now, and let's go ahead. If LHS is null and R, or I don't know, if either one is null, and we'll handle all the null here. If they're both null, we said they are equal. If it's the left-hand side that is null, then it's greater. Otherwise, it's the right-hand side that is null, meaning the left-hand side is smaller. Otherwise, we fall through and we say just probably just compare the int value cast to these. So since I wrapped enums with this refenum class, I just have a member that can give me the integer value of the value of the enum. And gosh, you know, if it were C++, you would just be saying int val, but evidently that doesn't work. I'm just curious. Yeah, can't convert t to int, even though t is an enum. Oh, it's because this is a generic class, and I didn't know, or it's not possible to specify a constraint that t should be an enum type. And I did the best I could, because enums are value types, but I couldn't specify that the value here is going to be an enum. So that's why this doesn't work, perhaps, but I guess I found this way to do it. Anyway, moving along. And now we should have a comparison function here. LHS, RHS. If the instrument types were not the same, then we can sort on that. Otherwise, we'll compare the next thing, which is the instrument name. Surely I have a compare here. Compare nulls least, nulls equal, LHS, instrument name, RHS, instrument name. If the name compare, then we sort on that. Why did it not like that? Oh, right. Instrument type, instrument type. So if we're still alive after comparing names, you know, you might have a situation where some of these are specified even though they aren't corresponding to the currently specified instrument type. So I'm not going to just go off and compare each one of these, but I'm going to put it within case testing. Oh, anyway, if the instrument type, we know that it's the same instrument type, so we already compared that. Nonetheless, let me just go ahead and make a local variable so it's easier to refer to. So if we are a laser scanner, then I need to compare the laser scanner parameters. Let's just get a little lazy here. Null's equal, that's good. The left hand side, if laser scanner, and the right hand side, if compare 1 not equal 0, return compare 1. And moving along. A lot of this feels kind of by rote, doesn't it? But just gotta do it. Got to do it. The next laser scanner parameter, let's say this one. Then the final laser scanner parameter. And I could compare this directly. I mean, I could return it directly. But oh well, I'll keep with the same kind of syntax here. See, I could just say return compare 3 because that's the last thing we're testing. But I think what I'll do is just let it fall through, and at the end of all the tests, return 0 if it passes everything. If it's a frame camera, again, I'll go ahead and grab one of these. The first parameter for a frame camera is called this. Then the second parameter for a frame camera is this guy. And the third parameter for a frame camera is this guy, for example. The fourth parameter. Is there a way I could have written this to not grow up so big, so many lines? Oh well. And the final case, the push broom camera, is the same for these two. Just keep to my form here of how I'm doing this. And then the third comparison, if it's a push broom camera, else we've got an assertion failure, or do we? I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and consider it an assertion failure. I mean, I could say instrument types null or valid. Oh, I'm terrible, but see, it's what I do. Otherwise, we have an assertion failure. Otherwise, we fell through and they are equal. Anyway, now we know the user has edited the object if these two things don't compare equal. I guess, well, you know, if this returns 0, then it hasn't been modified. So otherwise, it has been modified. So where were we in all of that as we unwind our stack that we got pushed onto mentally? I was writing the refresh form function, was updating this to say that pool user has, if the user has edited the configuration in any way, then the buttons to apply are true. Otherwise, mean, I could have just assigned this to these, but then I still would have made a local copy of it, because this is a property that does work, so oh well. And so that should look nice. And I also want to add event handlers to all the edit boxes that trigger anytime the user does type anything in. But let's see how far we can get here. If he reverts then we do that. We're setting text. This would trigger text changed events, which would trigger. So I guess they don't need the refresh form here. Actually. Oh well. All right. If the user is saving the changes, now we get to do something interesting, perhaps. But I'm gonna save this for a bit later. So I'm gonna go probably try to organize this a little bit. It's getting a little long. Let's see. So maybe I should put my properties together. I don't know. I'll leave them where they are, but let's just walk through here. I want to organize a little bit. This could maybe be named a little better. This is... Is this being used at all? Yeah, and I saved this because... right. If the user has edited some stuff and switches to some other instrument and then switches back, I want this to save. In-memory instrument configuration for the new instrument. I guess. This is really what it is. And we access that, initialize our controls, initialize our menus, menu command. What happens when we load up the form? And I want to come to our handlers. Let's see. These are cross-track, full view, text change. So we do have some handlers for when the edit boxes change. Here's handler for the selection changed. Let me kind of section off an area of our source code for handlers for mainly text boxes is what I want to handle, but let's say just user editing current laser configuration. Oh, not laser configuration, instrument configuration. And we need to wire up each and every one. What happens when, I guess I want to find my, I guess these guys now logically go inside there. When the user clicks a radio button. And this is correct, actually, that you should not do this update data, so to speak. So there's another thing I want to do in each of these, and that's just Well, let me wire them all up. I guess these come first. And then we have handlers for the laser scanner, which is all three. One, two, three. Then I guess I could just go in here and use this, couldn't I? The text changed event. Guess that's all I want to do. And why did I'm not using the delayed version, so I can use the built-in event. Oh, that's what I'll do. You've got this one. 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 And you've got this one. And you've got this one. And I guess for consistency, so the naming is consistent and everything, I'll get these two in the same way. And these would come first. Where are my handlers? Here they are. Now I'm gonna switch these over. This one is for laser field of view across track. This one is for point repetition rate. This one is for beam divergence. So the thing that I want to do in each of these cases is basically update. Some of them have special behavior, like, you know, if this gets edited, then this needs to update. A little feedback for the user. But in every single case, what I want to do is update it's not necessarily this. It's only if user, if bool editing, if the user's editing a new basically this is it. And since I'm gonna have this so many places, maybe I should make a small function for this. Test if editing new configuration and update. So the way I'm handling this is if the user edits anything on the form, I'm reconstructing this entire object based on what he has, based on reading all the fields, even though he's only edited maybe one field. It might be more efficient, so to speak, to just update, you know, the value within this that corresponds to what the user edited. Like if the user edits the across-track field of view on a laser scanner configuration, update then just the field of view. But you know, I'm not going to bother with that, and the computer is so exceedingly fast compared to things that happen at the scale of the user interface, you know, this is actually better. So just gonna do this better and more convenient and more consistent. So each single handler has this, along with anything else it may have. I suppose I should make it come first. There's something I need to delete up here, if you'll pardon me for a moment. Let's make it come first. Every single thing on the user's laser scanner had a feedback field. Alright. Actually, this is just a new sign of block, and this is a new, just a little delimiter, I guess. Alright. So for these, again, do this, each and every one. While I'm here, I suppose I could make these work. The cross-track total field of view. That's gonna do something similar to this. Well... gonna do something similar here. If it's a frame camera, be a cross-track field of view. And then edit readout frame camera, cross-track. We'll have a look at this once I finish doing all these. We'll have a look at how they work on the user interface. But it's just a little bit of busy work for the moment. This is gonna be again here. The long track field of view. And then the readout is different. Probably something, again, similar to that for the push broom. What do we have on the push broom? So here we had these two, and here we again have two. Okay, well that makes sense. So it's this one, the field of view here. It's now coming from the edit box for the push broom camera. The cross-track field of view, and then the readout is gonna be push broom camera, cross-track field of view, and then we have this situation one last time, a long track field of view, a long track field of view, and the readout is different. I think that's enough. We could see how it's working. I think we compile. I didn't leave anything dangling, did I? Did I just change my... That was odd. Maybe it compiles. What are we gonna get? reference not set. And, you know, if you look at this, you can see by the way I named it that the code was invalid, so I actually like this. This is a good thing to illustrate. This happened because I cut some code out of one place and pasted it in another place, and I didn't test the test for null. See, up here, the test for null was here. So, it was wrong just because I was working quickly, but if someone were reviewing this code, they could see that there was possibly a problem here because this says it might be null, and then we try to access a member on it right after we said it might be null, and we see we didn't do any null testing. So I do like at least the convention I'm using for the kind of labels I put onto the variable names and so forth. So what are we doing here? The current instrument configuration. I think it's just... Could this be null? I mean, if the where am I using this? Really? Sorry, where am I using this? In here, and there. Yeah, I think I will allow this to be null, which it will be if the user doesn't have anything selected. Anything from the list view. Let me find my errors. Propagate my or null tag. So if he's here, if the user's editing a new instrument, we've already tested this for whether he has done any edits. If he's editing an existing one, then this actually should not be null. It could be an assertion that it is not null, right? Because we've already tested here. Well, it's not new. No, he could have nothing selected. He could have nothing at all selected. In which case, if he has nothing selected, then he hasn't done any edits. You could say, I don't know, I could test that further up, but oh well. Basically, it's just how it worked out. So let's see where we are now. The other place I used it is here. If he doesn't have anything selected, then again, I just want to clear all the user interface. And I could just, rather than have a special case, here's everything on the form, clears all the, you know, the user editable fields and radio buttons on the form. Just create a dummy object and populate the fields from that. So this should actually work okay. If this is null, just make a new blank dummy object, and then we'll go in and test that all the fields of this are null and so forth, and it will be okay. Did that build? So why did that not show me anything? Oh, I'm scrolling. So where are we? User can click away, click something, highlight something. Here's her little buttons. They're a bit trimmed. He has to select something, then edit. Oh, I didn't add a handler for the instrument name, but this should do something. No, I need to refresh the form on each one. Anyway, you can see when the form does get refreshed, it knows we've edited something. Alright. So, I mean, I'm tempted to break this out. Maybe what I do is have some sub. Well, just bear with me here. And one of the sub things is apply revert buttons is basically what it is right now. If anything else falls under the same test, then I might rename that, but so when the user does a full refresh, we do all these sub, not that one. Well, I guess I'll just go along and build on that. We could put that in here as well. It would make sense to put that in here, actually. What else did we see that we wanted to do? When we had our user interface up, what else did we notice? I don't remember. Oh yeah, this guy. The instrument name edit box gets its own event handler. Hello, computer. Try that again. Alright, well, look. The source compiles, so you shouldn't be complaining. This is why we back up our source code every so often. In fact, let me do that. Where's our guy? Here's our guy. I don't know. This was number 1. This is number 2. Oh well. So just see where we were. Let's try to get to our designer. Come on, you can do it. Excellent. I think it would be easier without the designer. Just do it all hard-coded. The WinForms designer probably does save some time, even though you wrestle with it sometimes. My event handler is going to go up here. And it's just going to be another one of the guys. So let's see what we get, how far we are here. If I name this, I can do something. Haha! Actually, just this enough, having this selected, should be enough maybe to, quote, apply the edits on this new one, because he did change something. But we would just warn him, hey, you don't actually have anything entered in correctly. So where are we? What happens in our radio buttons? We are doing the refresh, right? Yes. And so what we need to do here and here is, if he's editing the new one, yeah, frankly, you know, now that I think about it, I don't really want to get rid of this completely, because we sort of did all that work, but it's actually irrelevant, because as soon as he clicks the button on a new one, he's done something. We'll just tell him, anyway. I wanted to investigate that our user feedback fields are working, so if it's a 60-degree total field of view, that's plus or minus 30. 100 kilohertz is 100,000 points per second. If we've got a 40-degree total, then half of that is 20. If it's 80-degree total, half of that is 40. Just testing. 45 here, half of that, and 23 here, half of that. Okay. So our user feedback fields work, and I guess we are ready to implement the Apply Edits button, so that will be exciting. And the first thing we're going to do when we click the button is validate the input, that it can actually be saved as a new instrument configuration or updating an existing configuration with valid data. So we need to test that we get something valid when we click that button. And I guess no way to do it but just to do it. So let's start by saying he must have an instrument configuration name. I don't know. You know, we should probably, on our instrument configurations names, we should probably have a convention that they are trimmed up. Like, you shouldn't have trailing spaces on an instrument configuration name. Probably. See, I'm just debating. I'm gonna put in a trim test here, and I'm debating whether I should make it consistent throughout my objects. That, for example, what I could do is have a property here that says instrument name, trim, or blank, and you know, it says and then I would make this private, and then everybody should use this, and then you're just guaranteed, you know, throughout the whole process, you load an object from file, and you do tests for equality, and you do stuff that at no point is any trailing space is gonna slip in, and there's an argument that I should make this applied within, like, the logic and the architecture within the program, like throughout the program, if I'm gonna have that test here where I allow the user to make it. Like, the test here and the logic here should match kind of the internals, but you know, so arguably I want to do that, but I guess I won't bother. Maybe I will. I don't know. What is this? Anyway. So I'll leave that, but I'll just say the user has to enter something that's not actually blank. If he tries to apply these edits, in order to do this a little more concisely, let me do it this way. So what I was about to do is do this test and say, you know, at the end it's going to return a success. I was about to do this test and say, if you have not entered an instrument name, and then I'm just going to return. This was going to be something that happens when the user clicks the Apply Edits button. But, or I could name this Validate Inputs or something. But anyway, in order to make it more concise so that I can do this on one line instead of two, so I'm basically, you know, if I could write it like this, it wouldn't really make a difference in the level of conciseness. But to make it a little more concise, here's the message that I want the user to be prompted about. And I'm returning in the same line so that this message comes up to here, we see that it's an error, and we prompt the user. So just a little more concise. Then if this RB is a laser scanner, next we have a frame camera, next we have a push broom camera, else what? I mean, I'm writing this test as I go along. I seem to be testing directly from the user interface. What I could do is, you know, get our object. You know, what we have here is this gonna be good enough? Just trying to think if there's a case where we want a little more precision than this is gonna let us get. And you know, what we could say is maybe I will do it this way. Oh, yeah, all we're gonna tell him is that there was an error parsing it. So, look, well, all this is making me come back to is this, if the user does something like enter a negative value, if the user enters negative 40 degrees, do we want to say there was an error parsing this, or do we want to say you entered a negative value? If we want to handle the fact that the user entered a negative value separately from just he entered something that couldn't be parsed, if we want that level of specificity, then I need to test this stuff directly from the user interface. We've already done quite a lot of testing from the user interface in creating this kind of parsed object when we parse an object out from the user interface. And what we could do is just see if this object is valid and test it from this object. And that just means that we'll have a little bit less precision in our error messages, but I don't care. But what I do need to do, make sure, is that we only parse things that are valid. So if we're going to parse this, the across track field of view just needs to be a positive value, right? The repetition rate needs to be a positive value. The beam divergence, I have a feeling most of these are just going to be, they need to be positive. Field of view, positive. Pixels, positive. If you're going to specify it, it needs to be positive, and it needs to be positive. And again, and again, and again. So where were we? Let's get this parsed object. And we can parse from here now. If parsed object instrument type, then it would be an assertion failure for the user to even be able to click the button, but nonetheless we'll gracefully handle it and say there was an error, no instrument type specified. Maybe I should say please. I think I should say please. Please enter. Oh, it's kind of more, actually more precise about what the problem was this way, so I'll forget about please. Let's see. It's just so long. I could make this operate on the object itself. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. Anyway. A new function that says whether you're valid or not. So this will return a quote error if this object is not valid. Otherwise it will return success. And here we can just say don't really need this anymore. So let's go to it. And you know what? I am going to go ahead and do this. Let me just make sure everything compiles okay before I do a rename. This is now private. And people should really use is this property. It's just making the same test that I would have done if I were testing this straight from the user interface, I guess. So if instrument name trimmer blank length equals 0, no instrument name. I mean, I didn't put it as a contract of this function that the message of the result is applying to the user. No instrument name. Here, cater message to user who is entering the values, I guess. Now I can say, what was it? You have not entered an instrument name. Oh my goodness. That's pretty funny. I mean, I don't often see programmers do this kind of stuff that I do, but I just like to make it clear. So let's see. That is ourselves, isn't it? And if this, oh, what's next? If what? So we've got our laser scanner. Our Fein camera and our push broom camera. Otherwise we're an assertion failure because we already tested that it's not null. Not just returning an error, but an assertion failure. Okay. So test the laser scanner parameters, which are these guys. Guess I can test each one. If laser scanner instrument field of view is null, error parsing instrument, what, laser scanner field of view? How's that? Whoops, what happened? Next is points per second. It's really the kilohertz. We're catering, right? And beam divergence, well, that's optional. This is an example of where crud. Do I have to go back to what I was doing before? Oh man, I've got to go back. Oh, just going back and forth here. It's really a pity. Do I care about the user that much? this was a nice thought. I mean, I'm gonna leave this in place because we might at some point want to check if it's valid. But I've gotta go back. Maybe just pull out my undo here. Whoa, what? Oh, because I renamed something. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Ugh. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Guess this will just validate the inputs. And... oh, my goodness. I mean, oh well, back to it. I need the parsed object. Or do I? I don't know. Oh well. I'll still test from the object where I can. I mean, the other thing I could do, to be honest, inside of this guy, I could just store strings, and then I would have the information of whether the user had entered anything. I could store strings here and convert it to, you know, doubles as appropriate. But you know, I think this is the last example of us needing this. So let me just go ahead. Oops, I did that wrong. Okay, so here was the source of our running back and forth here. I got to this guy. Beam divergence is an optional field, but so I can't just test for null to say whether there was an error or not. What I want to do is say if this edit the beam divergence if the text in the field, maybe the trim text, there's something in the field and we still parsed it out as null, then I can warn the user that there was an error parsing laser beam divergence. Does that make sense? So just look at this with me for a moment for me to convey what all that was about. Anyway, moving on. So those are the three parameters for a laser scanner. Otherwise, if parsed object, if it's a frame camera, then it's got this. This is required, so we can just directly test error parsing camera field of view. Num pixels. Error parsing camera cross track num pixels. Now we're coming to some optional fields, I believe. Field of view. So if this is null and the edit box for it I should really just add a trim text field. Let me go do it. It's something I want. It's something I want. There we are. For our edit box, a new property. Let's see where I should put it. Anyway, I guess I'll put it anywhere. That's what it is, for example. How's that? Text trim, there we are. Then we've got to warn the user. Error parsing, optional. But you entered something. A long track field of view. Also, if frame camera num pixels, a long track. And this edit frame camera, where are we? Is that right? Error parsing, a long track, num pixels. So that should finish with that. Then our push broom camera, it's got the same here. Then just one more. If this is optional and null, and this guy. Then error parsing camera optional, a long track field of view. How's that? Otherwise, exception, assertion failure. Otherwise, a success. So our apply button at the moment, I'm going to go test it. It's not going to do anything but see whether it was a valid instrument configuration or not, and whether we get our error messages that we expect. So if I want to apply this, can't even click the button, enter something, no name, good. Right, a name. Hey, what? You've not entered an instrument name. Did I never? I probably never set it. Oh, it's good to catch that now. When we produce the object, it probably never comes into here. Let's just go ahead and do it. Should we do that? You need a name. You need a field of view. Why did that work? I guess that's okay. I should maybe just leave this blank. But, oh well. Error parsing -1, error parsing 0. But 1 is okay. Oh, what? Oh, that's the next thing. Sorry, what did it say here? Field of view. Yeah, field of view. Field of view. Now we're on to kilohertz. Kilohertz. And the optional beam divergence was okay. So this is enough to define a laser scanner instrument configuration, but if I enter something here, it's going to give us an error. Otherwise we're okay, otherwise it's okay. So that all seems okay. I'll just quickly test this. No. 1, 2, I don't know. Yeah, that's right. That's okay. That's okay. Actually, there is another thing you need to do here. You need to have both of these, or neither. Both or neither here. So, yeah, I think you need both or neither. So, let's see. Our testing here was only in this case, and I guess it's just another separate test. If either of them is not null, a long track. The other optional one is total field of view and num pixels. So if either of them is not null, then if either of them is null, I don't know. It's just basically if they're not both true, the exclusive OR of these you know, being true. Error must provide both a long track, both optional parameters if either is specified. A long track, field of view, and num pixels. That's basically what it was. And for the rest, we're probably okay. What do you think? So I've got a frame camera here. Oh. If I just have one here, no, please provide both. Please provide one or both. So that works, and finally, field of view, num pixels, and this is optional, but if it doesn't parse, you get a warning. So that's fine. It's funny how that works, but anyway. Oh, yeah, the text handler was separate. I could... Should I go in and do it? One last little thing. We'll just make it null. Where are we? It's got in this little handler that just updates the feedback readout. Everything's got to be positive. Otherwise you'll see no feedback and you'll know something's wrong. with that, I think we're ready to actually implement the apply button. So we need to think a little bit about what's going to happen when the user does that. Revert edits is not working. Did I not fully implement that? One last detour, the revert edits button. Okay, this needs special handling if you're in the new. Special handling if you're in the new. So where was that? Guess we can just do it this way. If what? If bool user is entering if it's the new one, then just clear it. Before that happens, it's kind of a trick or a workaround there to make that work, but now I assume it's gonna revert. Yeah. So if you revert a new instrument, it just goes back to like nothing at all. If you apply a new instrument, that's a different situation. I mean, we can parse this out. We'll get a new object of that type. We can make sure it's valid. I guess we already know it's valid if we pass the test we do when we click apply. We can convert it to a regular object of our type that stores instrument configurations, and then just add it to the list and refresh the list and try to keep that selected, I suppose. And you know, the infrastructure will be revised as we need to revise it, because at some point when the user adds something here on the parent form probably needs to take notice of it, such as repopulating the combo boxes where the user's going to be able to select from the defined instruments. But just to get started, make a little progress here, let's go ahead and say that if he clicks apply, well, I tell you what, we're gonna need the reverse of this constructor that goes from a validly defined one to a user-defined one that might not ever have everything defined. You know, if we remember, this particular class that we're looking at now was just kind of, we made it in order to hold values that the user may have entered temporarily. So it's like temporarily holding an inconsistent state or invalid state that we wouldn't have been able to do if we only had this. But now I need to go from this back to this. So that's just produce instrument configuration valid or null. And what we're gonna do is get one of these. I don't know, whatever. And fill it up. Needs an instrument type. Guess I'll just do it this way. I mean, if we had implemented our check valid function, we could call that there. We don't even really need to do the testing because I'm only going to call this function on something that's valid. But oh well. Otherwise, needs a name. just gonna let this one go. Instrument name equal this. Instrument name. If we are a laser scanner, I'll do the other cases while we're here. Frame camera, push broom camera. Then we need everything to be well defined. If this, if laser scanner field of view is null, return null. Otherwise, if laser scanner field of view equal this, if laser scanner field of view, then the next parameter, I don't know, points per second, then points per second, and points per second, but without that suffix. Then the last one, beam divergence, beam divergence, beam divergence, but without the suffix. Is that right? Oh no, it was actually the same name. In which case, yeah, sorry. All I need to do here is just say this equals this, and I mean, we could directly assign the object, but copy or null. I just don't like sharing objects, sharing member variables between different objects unless it's clear that we're doing so. Even if both objects, one or both, are likely to be thrown away, I still don't like to share member variables unless we are explicit that we are doing so. And moving on. Then it's not gonna work. Should I just do it like this? Otherwise, our item, if camera equals field of view, if this, if camera num pixels null, return null. If camera num pixels, if camera, well, and then the others are optional, right? So, I mean, we could duplicate the testing that we did, but I'm not gonna. To say that you need to have one or both, I mean both or neither, but let's see. If it's a frame camera, you have these optional parameters. So rval item, the optional, this one equals this, this one. Well, I guess I actually do have to make the test here because of how I named this function. I said the return thing's gonna be valid or it's gonna be null. So I have to honor that by saying that if frame camera not equal null, or this if frame camera this not equal null. If either of them is null, it's not valid. Right? I mean, I would sort of be avoiding some of this if I really had made this class hold strings, and frankly that's what I wish I had done, but I'm far enough that I'm not gonna change it. Uh, it would have worked. It would have been kind of neat. Just hold the string that the user had in the text box, which is really what we wanted to persist anyway. But moving on. And otherwise, go ahead and take them. And what else? What else? What else? What else? This is just the same. And if this, and also the optional one, if push prune, optional. If push prune. Else assertion failure. Alright. So after all that we can convert. So when we click the apply button, otherwise, I'm still gonna need this. We generate it twice, but I don't care. Where are we? Or if he already has one selected, well, this is okay. We can just replace the object. So let's see. This list view. Currently selected list view item, for example. And if the user is editing the new configuration, then basically what we can do and refresh. And to do select the one we were just editing, I suppose. Otherwise, you know, this all might get revised later, but what would that do? What would it do? Should we have a look? Laser Scanner 1 has has a 30-degree field of view with 100,000 points per second. It's a little wrong here. What? 1e negative 10, where did that come from? Did I really mess that up somewhere? Jeez. Let's see what happens when I produce an object from the user interface. Oh, I divided by 1,000 when I should multiply by 1,000. Another thing that happened that I can just go take care of is that I can say make that blank again. Let's see. Laser scanner 1, field of view, kilohertz, beam divergence. Guess that's okay with me. Did I not get the name? When I click here, what happens? I probably did not assign it when I went back. When I went back to here, I probably did not assign the name. Really? I guess it's the wrong place. Where are we? Oh, I guess I omitted it in more than one place, perhaps. So there's the type. Here's the name. Oh, what? Name. And over here, oh, it is there. Maybe that's where it was missing. Maybe it wasn't the only place it was missing, I don't know. ls1, 10, 100. Hey, not so bad. Not so bad. Bad. I guess that's a little disturbing. So if let me just handle that in the refresh form function. if he doesn't have anything selected, then there's no instrument name. Sorry. You know, I don't need... Could be like that. I'm probably, you know, ever since I added event handlers to each and every text box, I'm probably triggering them a lot when I maybe don't necessarily want to. For example, in here, I'm triggering a lot of, like every time I do this, the event handler is going to come and run the same thing, which is this function. But, you know, it's going to be running this function a lot, for example, but oh well. So, camera, let's say 30, my tab order's all messed up. Probably fix my tab order. Let's see, is this working? No, so why is that? Where is the list? Oh yeah, I did the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. Which is that it isn't this. That should change. It's really oh well. Do I need to write yet another function? Well, let's go over there. Back to this guy. I mean, maybe what I need to do is just add a copy initialization. So, 1 second. That's fair enough. I need to say so on my instrument configuration, I just want to take an existing instrument configuration and populate it with the values of a configuration provided as an argument. And this is just going to be that this instrument type, you know, this is a fair enough function that's useful to exist. Instrument name, this if laser scanner, field of view, this, what am I doing here? This, and this one. And everything else, I don't care. Probably write some little utility that would do this automatically, like you just highlight this and paste and say I want like a copy function and it would just do it for you. A little program you could write to edit your own source code anyway. But it looks like I'm doing it myself. What's next? And if push broom. Looks like I got the wrong thing. So here I can take an opportunity to mention another aspect of my naming convention for functions, and that is if I'm writing a function that modifies the object for which the function is a member function, I sometimes prefix it with a underscore. So if I wrote this function, it would probably mean that I'm going to see, you'd probably have maybe two versions of this. If you had copy, this would mean that I call it on an object of this type, and it returns a new object of that type. Oh, in fact, I can write it. I can say so maybe I'll leave this in here just to illustrate. So, just two versions of the function here. Sometimes you want to take the values in one object, copy them over to another object. So here I've written a member function that acts on the object you want to be modified, and it's going to copy whatever comes in, and I know it's not going to return, it's acting on the object on which I'm calling this function. And the way that I give a heads up to myself that that's what's happening is I put an underscore here. You might have another version of the function that maybe you call it on an object and it returns a new object, which is a copy. And I could implement, this function in terms of this function in this way of making a new object, calling the kind of intrusive copy of version here, and then returning it. So it's just a convention of mine. I do think it's useful. It's just a small little notation, but little tricks like that to say, to me, a prefix on a function name is a heads up that it's going to modify the object on which it is called, especially if it were otherwise maybe not clear that it would do so. So, and what I was going to do with that is, instead of doing this, changing this object, I'm just going to update this object. Let's see if that does it. Hello. It's a frame camera. Now if I change something, it persists. If I change something in revert, we're back to where we were, rather. And yeah, that seems correct. And oh, anyway, sort of making progress, slowly perhaps. So what's next anyway? Maybe the ability to save, like import and export configuration files. That is something I want to do. Oh, what just happened? I guess that's okay, but... So this is kind of an unintended feature, but I guess it's okay that I don't know, a camera. If you select an existing thing and try to change the instrument type, which hopefully doesn't make a lot of sense, but you know, if I change the instrument type, I can always revert it. If I change the instrument type, oh, what happened here? Yeah, that's not good. I need to refresh the form. It needs a refresh. So where's my revert? Where's my refresh form and what are the things that it does? I'm just having a look at this. What would it do if I called it? Yeah, this should be able to be called regardless. I'm just going to clean up my refresh form a little bit. Refresh the instrument configurations list. Refresh. I guess the way we structured this is enablement main visibility, something like that. Put this somewhere else. And what am I calling this whole thing? Time to rename this anyway. Well, maybe just put a stub here. Refresh user interface fields. What? Oh, apply revert buttons. This is a little misleading. Let me call it How's that? And actually this could go in there, but oh well. So point being of my little restructuring here is that I want to call, what did I want to call this one? Oh, I need to call this at least whenever I revert, and so I guess I could just call this, let's see, let me leave that up and go see. So I guess what I can say here is I want to do a few aspects of the refresh form. I don't need to refresh the instrument configurations list. I do want to do this one, and I do actually want to do this one, and you know, frankly, I want to do this one too. It's just it's probably being handled by some event handler already, but so after all this work, have we got something that sort of lets you define your instruments? Oh no. What is my problem now? Okay, that worked. When I changed my list view, it didn't update properly. That's embarrassing that things would not just be automatically working out well for me. Let's see. Due to setting them up well in the first place, let's see. My handler for when the selection changes. I mean, should sort of work. Debugging now. Okay, that's okay, but when I come back here, whoa, what? Refresh form, what happens in refresh form? Yeah, it's all there. How is that possible now? I don't see the parameters. How is that possible? This is all kind of messed up. See how this is highlighted, but that's not working? I feel like I messed something up when I changed my function here, but you always do this. Otherwise, what's the deal? What's the deal? How do you not? Do I need to refresh it twice? I guess. I guess what I'm spinning my wheels over is, I select this. I'm testing. 1 second, because I guess I get what the issue is. Feel like I could have made a tighter correspondence between the user interface state and the state of my object in memory. But what I'm going to do to just run in circles here is that you may have to do this twice. If you're going to do this, I mean, this comes before that, but is that okay? Seems to be okay. I think that's all I really needed is that needed to come first before that. Because, for example, you select a new instrument configuration, then based on that fact it selects the appropriate radio button, then based on the radio button being selected, it selects what needs to be selected. I mean, it adjusts the visibility and enablement of the group boxes on the form and so forth. So let's see. Whoops, what did I do? I guess. Does that make sense? I guess I don't really care about this right now. I'm changing the configuration of, assume it's valid, and so that's what you get. I guess, no, I was just looking at where that comes into play. I was just looking at it, which is this guy. What I could do is if how do I want to do this? is. And is it worth just restructuring something here? Well, no. I mean, you're gonna have a valid instrument configuration. You just tried to change its type. I mean, who really cares? I guess I just don't care. I mean, if I were really gonna restructure this, I might go back and do what I was talking about um, of having this user editable thing that holds values. I might have one of these for every single instrument configuration and have it store strings instead of like nullable real values and such. Store strings for everything, and then you would have every field like uniquely determined, and you know, it would be a little more flexible as for what you wanted to have happen in the user interface. Otherwise, I can keep trying to just, you know, work around stuff. Like, what I could say is, don't populate, you know, maybe I should clear everything first. Maybe I'll just go ahead and do it this way, because it's a semi-elegant way of doing it. Clear everything first. So this, you know, if I had another use for this, it maybe would be worth its own function, but this will be okay for now. Or was it? Right. Clear everything, then only set the stuff that goes in the right place. Laser scanner. Frame camera. Edit push broom. What are we gonna get now? Should be blank here. Okay. Now the question is, what happens when you come back? Okay. So if I say 60, I might lose it now. No, I didn't. I guess... I guess that makes sense. well, functioning well enough for me for the moment. I want to implement import and restore. Import and export, I guess I should say. Well, maybe I should make the user interface so that it works without having the buttons hidden here, for one thing. But where am I going to put my... maybe over here. Doesn't need to be so big anymore. Export import. What I may do is use a trick I like to do of pulling out what I call a menu button. I could have two buttons, import, 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 export, but I'm going to have a menu button instead. You'll see what that does. Now, what's happening here? The size of this is getting programmatically adjusted, isn't it? Do I still need to do that? I was doing that because I couldn't use an anchor point anymore because I had these all the way down, but I don't necessarily need to do it that way anymore. I can possibly use anchors again. It's just is that gonna look too hideous if I do this? Let's see here. You know, one other thing I might think about doing on this user interface is adding an output window here that you can see more details about every single instrument, so that as if you're defining one, you can kind of cross-check with another, because sometimes as you're editing these, you want to see one while you're editing another. That's just a thought that I had, but you know, I probably won't worry about it. Let's see what this is gonna look like if I go back and use an anchor point, perhaps. And this one. What are we gonna have now? Perhaps no need for this anymore. Well, that's not so bad. I guess that's not so bad. When you first open it, it looks somewhat half decent. Uh-huh. that still happened. Revert edits. Should probably just refresh form. Oh, I'm a little bit silly to restructure things when I'm basically finished with it, but my refresh form function is gonna get a bunch of enums, and finally gonna rename this. I could probably just always do this one. This one is always good to do, right? As well as, yeah, I think these are my two options. And then just always do these. And wherever we call, let's do yes and yes. Okay, if you check one of these, if all I did is check a radio button, I shouldn't need to refresh the configurations list, and I shouldn't need to do that either. Now if the selection changes, then for sure do kind of a full refresh. What is this? Yes. And yes. Where are we here? Apply edits. If I have applied an edit, it's yes and yes. was the one that, oh yeah, the one that is doing the refresh individually is the revert button. The revert button now just calls refresh form. And if for some reason I thought it's not necessary to refresh the laser instrument configurations list, I can say no, and then I can say yes to repopulating the user interface. Oh, come on, give it to me. And then it will know the refresh form function has the logic to know the correct sequence in which to do it, because I got the sequence wrong here, basically. So that was the reason I wanted to make it more centralized and allow you to parameterize which refresh operations you actually want to do. So that reverted okay. Yep. Anyway, I think we're in fairly good shape at somewhat long last. Somewhat belabored long last. And, well, now what I want to do is import export. I'm at a place where it's sort of working enough that I just want to make it another source backup. So let's do it. Backup number 3. And import export. So when we initialize our menus, we have one more menu. This should not take long at all. Then we can show you what the results were from the serialization logic we wrote in the previous video session. And what we want to do, if the user wants to import, let's make a new window to save a single file. And we're gonna say that maybe the title, first of all, browse to save instrument configurations file. And what other options do we want here? I've by the way, I've just do you want to see what the underlying class is? I've just written a class as usual to wrap one of the underlying .NET classes So the underlying .NET class is this save file dialog, and I liked wrapping it because, see, okay, instead of create prompt, you have prompt to confirm file creation if path does not exist. A little more explicit, I guess. Overwrite prompt, then adding the filters, the logic there. What is this? Check file exists, and that it should exist. Check folder for file path exists. Here's one of the things that I remember. I thought it's useful to draw a distinction between is when you're setting up to show the dialog to the user, I thought it's useful to allow the programmer to say you're setting up an initial file name, but then when you want to get the path that the user actually selected, I mean, this right here is enough justification to write our own class to wrap the underlying .NET class, because the .NET class, when the user browses for a file and you get the return from that, it calls it file name. Whose idea is it to refer to the file path by file name? If file name is something distinct from a file path, I sure hope. What it really returns is the full path to whatever the user browsed to. So it's really a selected file path. So this renaming alone is enough reason to do the wrapping the underlying library, so to speak. But then also, you notice it's been reused. They call it file name here, and then they call it file name here if you want to set the file name as like a suggestion that you specify before the form opens. So they're reusing a field that is not named well, and I go ahead and wrap it to name the field well in each case, even though in the underlying object they're actually the same field, but these are different uses of it. Anyway, I guess I felt the need to go through that detour. What else should we do here? Add filter. Let's say what? I guess we can save it as an XML extension. And then if the user wants to browse for all files, that's also okay. I guess the default extension is XML. And I guess that's enough to go ahead and show it to the user. If the user really wants to do it, if he chose something affirmative, what? Now let's go back to our instrument configuration list. Now, in fact, I'm going to rework this because I was thinking about this and I don't really like having this class at all. Because all that's inside this class is a list of instrument configurations. And having a class that represents the list instead of the individual objects is useful for some utility functions, like writing the whole thing out to XML. But I think maybe what I'll do is rework this and just say that this is a utility class. Don't need any of this anymore. This will just return a list of these guys. this is now a listutil item. So I should call this listutil. And this produces XML. Based on a provided argument list. Name or ID. Something like that. So all I've done there is I had a class that was just containing a list, and it was sort of at that point one level of indirection that I just didn't need, and it was just kind of annoying to me. So what we'll have here instead is an instrument list, not null. Okay, I think it's cleaner. And then, whoops, this guy can access it directly. This list is now the parent list. And but the reason I was coming to that is we want to write out our list of instrument configurations to a file, and I guess it's going to just be called, let's see, I could write a class separately that represents a configuration file, but I think I don't really need to do that. All I'm going to do is say as a listutil is fine. Write instrument configuration list to XML file given path and given list and path. Given path and list. Output file path. So maybe you see where I'm going with that. And what we're going to do is first of all get a root XML node for that list. I don't know, XML instrument list. These are static functions I should have done. Who cares? Maybe the file name, or the date or something. I don't know, we can add something interesting here, like a timestamp maybe. I mean, it's random, but oh well. I don't know, just a random timestamp, I don't care. And then write it out to file. Write to file. Then the corresponding load from file. And this can maybe take a small structure like then if it's successful, the list of loaded instruments. So load, is this still a list util? I don't know. Load list instrument configuration list from file. From file given path. I don't know, let's see. What I want to do now is load it as an XML file first. Parse the root XML from file, or null if the file could not be read. So if root XML is null, then the load result is an error. Otherwise, just parse out the elements here. It's going to be a success because we read the file. How's that sound? And parse out the elements with this function. Anyway, I mentioned in the previous stream we could do more error handling if we wanted to, but if something is corrupt in the XML file, it just won't load. It'll just load as a blank list. So we get a valid result if we can read the file at all, but it just might be an empty list. And anyway, so now we'll use these new functions we've written. Where's my import-export buttons? From this path, instrument, configuration, list util, load from file, or no, we're saving here. No, import. Well, I'm sort of backwards on this whole thing. That's the import. So I had really been writing the export, in which case we're going to take our list and save it to file. And our list is really selected file path and this instrument configuration list, or empty, huh? That's fine with me. Take the result. And if save result is a success, then we say exported. I don't know, maybe we can say the number of instruments. I don't know. Otherwise, there was an error. We could possibly not allow import and export if there are no instruments defined, but oh well. If the user wants to import and export files that have no instruments in them, I guess it's okay with me. So now the import and what else? I guess the same stuff. Then we have another function to call, which is load from file. So we are importing. And that returns, could call it a small structure even though I made it a reference type, but I don't really care. If there was a problem reading the file, just advise the user. Looks a little redundant, but it makes sense, really. Believe me that it makes sense. Otherwise, we can refresh our instrument configuration list. Can that be assigned? This will probably change at some point how this is working, but actually I said empty, so I said on the property name here that basically it's never going to be null. So I had to honor that constraint. Even if you try to set it to null, it's not going to let you. It's going to make a new object, a new empty object instead. And the list is the list that we loaded. Then refresh the form, probably fully. And you know, we could think about warning the user, do you really want to import and export, and maybe that's going to throw away the work you've already done. But oh well. And you know, when we go to working on the main program form, which so far is this thing, we'll probably have a default configuration file that you load from when the program starts and that you save to probably every time you apply a change, so that as you edit this, it's really you're editing what you get every time you open or close the program, but you can always make your own sort of files and lists. So let's see. Camera. I need to fix the tab order. And a push broom. So let's see what we get. Yeah, aerial survey instrument list. Exported 3 instruments to file. Let's go look at that list. Guess I don't really need an icon here for some reason. That is where we saved it, right? Where did I save it? Oh, over here. I didn't assign any white space. You know what? I should have, because otherwise it doesn't look that great. Why don't we not even look at it? I'm just gonna go assign some white space to our XML file, which is to say that when we save it, we'll take our XML and we'll assign some white space. And I can just import that one we just did and see if it comes back. Hello! I don't remember what values I entered, but sort of looks okay. Then if we export it again, just overwrite it. That looks half decent. Well, as we remember, we did just write each instrument out on one line, so it still looks kind of ugly, but that's okay. So you've got a laser scanner with a certain name and a field of view and the number of points per second and the beam divergence. Then we've got a frame camera, that's just called camera is what we named it, with the field of view and a certain number of pixels, and the optional fields we just didn't record at all. Push broom camera with a name and the other stuff and some optional fields, and that's it. So, to be honest, I'm probably content with our work for today, and from the next session we can start implementing the main program. The reason we've been doing all this fiddling around with instrument configurations, and I don't know, maybe we'll find some bug at some point that we need to return to this for some reason, but seems to look okay. So right, from our next session we will start working on the main program and take it from there. So thanks, I guess that's it for today. Good night.